Captain Ra of the Hegemony Third Fleet had seen many battlefields across the galaxy, but nothing quite like this. The smoking ruins of 442B stretched before his reconnaissance team like a graveyard of civilizations. What should have been a routine planetary survey had turned into something far more disturbing. "Sir, we're detecting energy signatures from the northern continent," reported his tactical officer, a six-armed whose mandibles clicked nervously. "It appears to be defensive in nature." Ra's scaled brow furrowed as he studied the readings on his portable scanner. The planet had been marked as recently fallen to the Devourers, those mechanical monstrosities that consumed worlds like locusts. According to intelligence reports, nothing should have survived their month-long feeding frenzy. Yet here were clear signs of active resistance. "Impossible," muttered Dr. the Expeditions. Her crystalline form shimmered with uncertainty. "The Devourers left this system 2 weeks ago. Orbital scans confirmed total biological extinction." But Ra had learned to trust his instincts over reports. 20 years of military service across dozens of species had taught him that the universe held more surprises than any database could contain. He ordered his team to investigate the energy source, despite the obvious risks of landing on a recently Devourer-touched world. The shuttle descended through an atmosphere thick with ash and the metallic tang of processed matter. Twisted spires of what had once been cities jutted from the landscape like broken teeth. Everything bore the characteristic marks of Devourer consumption's smooth, geometric patterns where organic matter had been systematically harvested and converted into raw materials. As they approached the energy signature, Ra's secondary heart began beating faster. Through the viewports, they could see flashes of brilliant light erupting from what appeared to be a fortified position. The defensive barrier was crude but effective, constructed from salvaged materials and powered by some kind of portable fusion generator. "By the ancients," whispered his pilot, a normally stoic whose bark-like skin had gone pale. "Something's still fighting down there." The tactical displays showed a pattern that made no sense. A single defender was holding a circular perimeter roughly 2 kilometers in diameter. The position was under constant assault from what appeared to be Devourer remnant scout units and resource collectors that had remained behind to clean up missed biological matter. The defensive fire was accurate and devastating, each shot calculated for maximum efficiency. Ra ordered a wider scan of the area, what they found all logic and military doctrine. The lone defender wasn't just surviving, they were winning. Scattered around the perimeter lay the twisted remains of dozens of Devourer units, their quantum processors dark and their harvesting appendages severed with surgical precision. "How long has this been going on?" Ra asked his sensor operator. "Based on the debris patterns and energy expenditure, at least 12 days, sir. Continuous combat for nearly 2 weeks." The implications hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. No known species could maintain that level of combat effectiveness for such an extended period. The Hegemony's own elite troops required rest cycles every 6 hours. Even the legendary warriors, bioengineered for endurance, needed downtime after 48 hours of sustained combat. Doctor's form flickered with excitement and disbelief. The metabolic requirements alone should have killed any organic being days ago. Unless, she paused, her crystalline matrix rotating as she processed possibilities. "Captain, we need to identify the species immediately. This could represent a significant tactical advantage for the Hegemony." Ra nodded grimly. The war against the Devourers had been going poorly for the past 3 years. Every advantage mattered, especially one that could hold ground against their most persistent units. He ordered a careful descent, keeping their shuttle's stealth systems active and weapons ready. As they landed behind a ridge approximately 1 kilometer from the defensive position, Ra felt a familiar mixture of anticipation and dread. He had encountered dozens of species during his career, from the hive-minded collective to the energy-based ethereals. Each had their own methods of warfare, their own strengths and weaknesses, but this defender was demonstrating capabilities that seemed to transcend normal biological limitations. The reconnaissance team moved cautiously through the devastated terrain. Overhead, the planet's wounded sky flickered with unnatural colors where the Devourers had disrupted atmospheric chemistry. The ground crunched beneath their feet, a mixture of ash and crystallized organic matter that had been processed and then abandoned. Through his enhanced optics, Ra caught his first glimpse of the defender. The figure was humanoid, roughly 2 meters tall, wearing primitive but effective armor cobbled together from salvaged materials. The being moved with fluid precision, transitioning between cover positions with an economy of motion that spoke of extensive training and experience. Human, Doctor breathed over the communication channel. That's a human. The word sent ripples of confusion through the team. Humans were a recently discovered species from a backwater system called Sol. They had barely achieved interstellar travel and were considered primitive by galactic standards. Their military capabilities were largely unknown, and most hegemony analysts classified them as potential client species at best. Yet here was a single human holding ground that entire hegemony battalions would have struggled to defend. The defensive position showed clear signs of engineering genius, overlapping fields of fire, redundant power systems, and supply caches positioned for maximum tactical advantage. This wasn't the work of a primitive species stumbling through their first galactic war. Ra watched as the human engaged a devourer harvester unit. The machine was the size of a small building, armed with plasma cutters and protected by adaptive shielding. The human's weapon, some kind of modified energy rifle, punched through the devourer's defenses with 3 precise shots. The machine collapsed, its quantum brain sparking as it died. What impressed Ra most wasn't the marksmanship, though that was remarkable. It was the tactical thinking. The human had allowed the devourer to advance to a specific point before engaging, using the terrain to limit the machine's mobility while maximizing the impact of each shot. It was textbook military doctrine, executed with the precision of a veteran warrior. "Sir," his communications officer suddenly reported, "I'm detecting structured electromagnetic emissions from the human's position. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies." "Translation?" Ra asked. Doctor's crystalline form pulsed as she processed the signal. "It's a warning, Captain. They're broadcasting instructions for other survivors, telling them to stay away from this sector. They're claiming the area is compromised and dangerous for civilian evacuation." The pieces clicked together in Ra's mind with stunning clarity. This human wasn't just defending random territory. They were protecting something or someone. The defensive position wasn't about holding ground. It was about buying time for others to escape. A new respect began growing in the captain's chest, unfamiliar but undeniable. He had seen courage before, witnessed species make desperate stands against impossible odds. But this was different. This was a single individual choosing to face extinction rather than abandon their post, maintaining discipline and tactical effectiveness even in the face of certain death. The human's next engagement confirmed Ra's assessment. A pair of devourer scouts approached from the eastern perimeter. The human could have eliminated them safely from cover, but instead chose a more dangerous angle of attack. The captain realized why moments later, the safer position would have left civilian evacuation routes exposed. This human was willing to accept personal risk to protect beings they couldn't even see, might never meet, and who might already be dead. It was a level of selfless dedication that reminded Ra why he had joined the hegemony military in the first place, before politics and bureaucracy had complicated everything. "Captain," his tactical officer reported, "Devourer reinforcements are approaching from the south. Large formation, at least 20 units including 2 heavy processors." Through his optics, Ra could see the human had detected the incoming threat. They moved with renewed urgency, checking weapon systems and adjusting defensive positions. But there was no panic, no desperate scrambling, just professional competence in the face of overwhelming odds. The human began broadcasting again, this time on emergency frequencies. Doctor translated quickly. "Final warning. All civilian vessels must clear the northern evacuation corridor immediately. Defensive perimeter will be compromised in approximately 15 minutes. Do not attempt rescue operations." Ra felt something twist in his stomach. The human knew they were about to die. The math was simple and brutal: 20 devourer units, including heavy processors, against a single defender who had been fighting for 2 weeks straight. Yet they were still thinking about protecting others, still maintaining their duty even as death approached. "Sir," his pilot asked quietly, "what are your orders?" Ra stared at the human through his optics, watching them prepare for their final stand. Military protocol was clear: observe and report. Do not engage unknown species. Avoid unnecessary risks to hegemony personnel. But something deeper than protocol was stirring in his chest. something that spoke to the warrior he had been before bureaucracy dulled his edges. The approaching Devourer formation was visible now, their sensor arrays sweeping the terrain as they advanced. The human had perhaps 10 minutes before contact, 10 minutes to prepare for a battle that could only end one way. Doctor's voice cut through his thoughts. Captain, this is an unprecedented opportunity. We could learn more about human combat capabilities in the next few minutes than months of formal contact. The tactical data alone could shift the entire war effort. But Ra wasn't thinking about tactical data anymore. He was thinking about honor, about duty, and about what it meant to stand alone against the darkness. This human had already demonstrated more courage than most species showed in their entire military histories. They deserved better than to die as research subjects. The Devourer formation was 5 minutes out when Ra made his decision. It wasn't the decision his superiors would have wanted, wasn't what regulations demanded, but it was right in ways that transcended military protocol. Prepare a communication package. Standard hegemony introduction protocols, emergency priority. Sir, are you planning to make contact? The risks. The risk, Ra interrupted, is letting someone that valuable die alone. He opened a channel to the human's position, hoping their communication systems were sophisticated enough to receive and translate hegemony standard. The next few minutes would determine not just the fate of one remarkable warrior, but potentially the future relationship between two species. Sergeant had been expecting death for 3 days now. The ammunition was running low, his makeshift armor had more holes than protection, and his body was operating on stimulants that would probably kill him before the Devourers did. But expectations and reality were two different things, and reality had just become very complicated. The transmission crackling through his salvaged communication array was definitely not human. The translation software he had cobbled together from evacuated civilian equipment was struggling with the syntax, but the meaning was clear enough. Someone was offering help. Didn't trust easily. 14 days of continuous combat against machines designed to consume entire civilizations had burned optimism out of his system like fever. But the tactical situation was simple. 20 Devourer units were approaching. He had maybe 40 rounds of ammunition left, and his portable fusion generator was showing warning signs that suggested imminent catastrophic failure. He keyed his transmitter, speaking slowly and clearly despite his exhaustion. Unknown vessel, this is Sergeant, Terran Colonial Defense Force. I am not in need of rescue. Repeat, I am not requesting extraction. This position must be held for another 6 hours to ensure civilian evacuation completion. The response came quickly, translated into accented but understandable English. Sergeant, this is Captain Ra of the Hegemony 3rd Fleet. We have been observing your defense for the past hour. Your tactical position is about to be overrun. We offer immediate fire support and tactical assistance. Allowed himself a bitter laugh as he checked his weapons charge indicator. 37 rounds. The approaching Devourer formation included 2 heavy processors walking factories that could produce more combat units from any available matter. He had maybe 3 minutes before they entered optimal firing range. Captain Ra, I appreciate the offer, but I need to know your capabilities before I can coordinate anything. What are you bringing to this fight? Through his scope, could see the alien's shuttle now sleek and obviously advanced, with weapon systems that looked like they meant business. But appearances meant nothing against Devourers. He had seen entire planetary defense fleets reduced to scrap metal by machines that looked like construction equipment. We have plasma artillery, electromagnetic pulse weapons, and kinetic penetrators. Our shields can provide temporary cover for your position. What are your mission parameters, Sergeant? Mission parameters. Almost laughed again, but there was nothing funny about the reality. My mission is to prevent Devourer forces from accessing the northern evacuation corridor until 1400 local time. That's 5 hours and 37 minutes from now. The corridor leads to a hidden civilian shelter containing approximately 400 survivors, including 63 children. The transmission was silent for long enough that wondered if he had lost the connection. When Ra's voice returned, something in the alien's tone had changed. Sergeant, you have been holding this position for 14 days. Our scans indicate continuous combat with minimal rest. How is this possible? Shifted position as his motion detectors picked up the advancing Devourer formation. 2 minutes to contact. Captain, I don't know your species' capabilities, but humans can do a lot more than most people think when the alternative is letting children die. Are you going to help, or should I focus on my targeting solutions? The alien shuttle suddenly dropped from its observation position, descending rapidly toward the battlefield. Felt a surge of adrenaline cut through his exhaustion. Either he was about to get the first good news in 2 weeks, or he was about to die with witnesses. Fire mission incoming, Ra's voice crackled over the comm. Mark your targets, Sergeant. We'll handle the heavy processors. Didn't waste time with thanks. He activated his targeting laser, painting the nearest heavy processor with invisible light that his new allies' sensors could detect. The massive machine was 300 meters away and closing fast, its harvesting appendages already extending toward his position. The alien ship's first shot was a revelation. A beam of coherent energy punched through the heavy processor's adaptive shielding like it was paper, vaporizing the machine's quantum brain in a flash of superheated metal. The second processor died 3 seconds later, cut in half by what appeared to be a magnetically accelerated projectile traveling at significant fraction of light speed. Targets eliminated, Ra reported. Sergeant, we're detecting additional Devourer formations approaching from multiple vectors. This appears to be a coordinated assault on your position. Was already moving, relocating to his secondary firing position as his sensors painted a picture that made his blood run cold. Not 20 units, 60. The Devourers had been gathering forces for a massive push, probably triggered by the alien ship's arrival. What should have been a manageable last stand was about to become a full-scale battle. Captain, I need to know your ammunition and power limitations, called as he engaged a scout unit with his rifle. The shot took the machine in its sensor cluster, dropping it with mechanical precision despite his shaking hands. Because we're about to face a lot more than a cleanup operation. Our primary weapons have sufficient power for extended engagement. But Sergeant, I must ask, why do you not retreat to the shuttle? We can extract you to safety and coordinate a relief operation. Paused in his reloading to stare at the approaching enemy formation. 60 Devourer units meant this wasn't random. They had detected the alien ship and were moving to eliminate all resistance in the area. If he left his position, the aliens would have to face the entire formation without his local knowledge and prepared defenses. Negative on extraction, Captain. This position gives us optimal fields of fire and established supply lines. If we abandon it now, those 60 units will spread out and hunt down every civilian in a 100-kilometer radius. We hold here, or everyone dies. The silence on the comm told everything he needed to know about alien psychology. They were probably used to commanders who made logical decisions based on acceptable losses and strategic priorities. They weren't used to humans. Sergeant, Ra said slowly, our tactical analysis indicates this position cannot be held against 60 Devourer units. The logical decision is strategic withdrawal. Smiled grimly as he checked his remaining ammunition. 28 rounds. Captain, let me explain something about human logic. Those children in the shelter don't know about acceptable losses or strategic withdrawals. They know that someone promised to keep them safe. That someone is me. Logic doesn't enter into it. The first wave hit 60 seconds later, 15 scout units moving in coordinated patterns designed to overwhelm defensive positions through sheer volume of fire. And his alien allies responded with devastating accuracy, each shot calculated for maximum effect. The aliens' weapons were clearly superior to anything in human arsenals, but their tactics were cautious and methodical. Fought differently. He took risks that made the alien's tactical officer audibly gasp over the open comm channel, exposing himself to enemy fire to achieve better shooting angles or draw attacks away from the alien's position. He moved through the battlefield like someone who had memorized every crater and debris pile, using terrain advantages that weren't obvious to outside observers. Sergeant, your tactical approach is extremely aggressive, Doctor observed during a brief lull in the fighting. You're accepting damage to achieve objectives that could be accomplished with lower risk. Doctor, aggressive isn't the right word, replied as he field-stripped his rifle to clear a jam. Effective is better. I've been fighting these machines for 2 weeks. I know how they think, how they move, what they prioritize. You're better equipped, but I'm better informed. The second wave proved his point. 20 Devourer units, including several new types that had learned to recognize. He called out warnings and tactical advice that saved the aliens from walking into carefully laid traps. When one of the units nearly flanked their position, abandoned his cover entirely to intercept it with his last thermal grenade. The explosion knocked him unconscious for 30 seconds. When he came to, Ra was speaking urgently over the comm. "Sergeant, are you functional? Your life signs are showing severe stress indicators." Inventory checked himself quickly. Probable concussion, definitely some broken ribs, and his armor was completely useless now. But his rifle still worked, and he still had 18 rounds. "Still in the fight, Captain. How many hostiles remaining?" 25 units, third wave incoming. "Sergeant, I must insist on immediate medical evacuation. Your combat effectiveness is severely compromised." Laughed, surprising himself. It wasn't a bitter laugh this time, it was genuinely amused. "Captain, you've been watching me fight for 90 minutes. Have I looked combat effective this entire time?" "That is an excellent point, Sergeant." The third wave was different. The Devourers had adapted to the aliens' superior firepower and were using more sophisticated tactics. They advanced in staggered formations, used suppressing fire to limit the defenders' mobility, and coordinated their attacks to overwhelm specific sectors of the defense perimeter. Found himself working more closely with the alien team than he had expected. He provided tactical advice while they supplied the heavy firepower needed to stop Devourer advances. It was an unusual partnership, human experience and determination combined with alien technology and discipline. "Sergeant," Ra called during the height of the battle, "how did your species develop such extreme combat endurance?" Paused his firing to consider the question. Around him, the battle raged with mechanical precision as Devourers probed for weaknesses and aliens responded with measured force. "Captain, I don't think it's about endurance. It's about purpose. When you know exactly why you're fighting, everything else becomes details." "Explain." "Those children in the shelter aren't abstract strategic objectives. They're specific kids with names and faces and futures worth protecting. Makes it hard to quit, even when logic says you should." The fourth wave broke against their combined defense like water against stone. Was down to 6 rounds and running on pure adrenaline, but the aliens' weapons were functioning perfectly. More importantly, they were learning to fight like humans, taking calculated risks and accepting short-term costs for long-term advantages. As the last Devourer unit fell, smoking and sparking in the devastated landscape, allowed himself to collapse against a chunk of debris. His hands were shaking too badly to reload his rifle, and his vision was starting to blur around the edges. "Sergeant," Doctor's voice came over the comm, "you require immediate medical attention. We have basic trauma facilities aboard our shuttle." Checked his chronometer. 3 hours and 15 minutes until the evacuation deadline. "Negative, Doctor. We need to prepare for the next wave. They'll send everything they have when they realize this position is still active." "What makes you think there will be another wave?" The medical scanner in Doctor's crystalline appendages painted a picture that everything she understood about biological limitations. Sergeant's body should have shut down days ago, stress hormones at toxic levels, neural fatigue indicators off the charts, muscle tissue showing signs of severe overuse. Yet he continued to function with the mechanical precision of a combat veteran. "This is impossible," she murmured to Captain Ra over their private channel. "His biological systems are operating at efficiency levels that would kill most known species. How is he maintaining consciousness, let alone tactical awareness?" Ra watched the human carefully as systematically checked and cleaned his rifle despite hands that trembled with exhaustion. "Perhaps we've been approaching human physiology from the wrong perspective, Doctor. Maybe their limitations aren't where we expected them to be." Had accepted medical attention only after extracting a promise that it wouldn't interfere with his combat readiness. He sat propped against the shuttle's hull while Doctor's scanners worked, his eyes constantly moving across the defensive perimeter. Even in relative safety, the human remained vigilant. "Sergeant," said carefully, "our scans indicate you've been operating under severe physiological stress for an extended period. Most species would experience cognitive breakdown under these conditions. How do you maintain tactical thinking?" Paused in his weapon maintenance to look at her. His eyes were bloodshot and surrounded by dark circles, but they remained sharp and focused. "Doctor, stress doesn't shut down thinking, it clarifies it. When everything non-essential gets stripped away, you're left with what really matters. But the metabolic cost of failure is higher, interrupted gently. Human bodies can do amazing things when the alternative is unacceptable. We just don't usually test the limits because most situations don't require it. Ra's tactical officer suddenly spoke up from his position monitoring the perimeter sensors. Captain, we're detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the southeast. Configuration suggests a major devourer assault force. Was on his feet before the officer finished speaking, his exhaustion seemingly forgotten. How many units? What's the estimated time to contact? Approximately 120 units, including multiple heavy processors and what appears to be a command node. 23 minutes to effective range. The numbers hung in the air like a death sentence. Even with the alien's superior firepower, facing over 100 Devourer units was beyond the capabilities of a single shuttle and a wounded human soldier. But was already moving, checking his equipment and studying the tactical display with professional focus. Captain, I need to know your ship's maximum combat endurance, said. Power reserves, ammunition supplies, shield regeneration rates, everything. Ra shared the technical specifications, watching's face as the human processed the information. The sergeant's expression remained calm and analytical, showing no signs of despair despite the overwhelming odds. Adequate for sustained engagement, concluded. But we'll need to modify our tactical approach. Defensive positions won't work against this many units. We need to control their advance and force them into kill zones. Doctor's crystalline form flickered with confusion. Sergeant, you're discussing tactics as if victory is possible. Our combined forces cannot defeat 120 Devourer units. Looked at her with genuine surprise. Doctor, victory isn't about defeating every enemy unit. Victory is accomplishing the mission. My mission is to keep Devourers away from the evacuation corridor for 2 more hours. That's achievable. How? Ra asked, his military training recognizing something in his tone that suggested a plan. By making them chase us, replied, pointing to his tactical map. The Devourers are programmed to eliminate all resistance in their operational area. If we lead them away from the corridor and keep them engaged elsewhere, they can't threaten the civilians. We just need to stay alive long enough for the evacuation to complete. The simplicity of it was breathtaking and terrifying. Was proposing to use himself and the alien ship as bait, drawing a massive enemy force away from their primary objective through personal sacrifice. It was tactically sound and completely insane. The survival probability began. Is irrelevant, finished. Doctor, you're thinking about this backwards. The question isn't whether we survive. The question is whether those children get to grow up. Everything else is secondary. Ra felt something shift in his understanding of human psychology. He had encountered courage before, but this was different. Not the desperate bravery of cornered animals, but the calculated sacrifice of beings who understood exactly what they were choosing. Sergeant, explain your tactical plan. Spread his map on the shuttle's hull, marking positions with quick, precise movements. We establish a mobile defense pattern here, 7 kilometers from the current position. The terrain funnels their advance into 3 primary approach routes, allowing us to control engagement range and timing. We hit hard, fall back, hit again. Keep them focused on pursuit rather than area denial. And when we run out of space to retreat. Smile was grim but determined. Then we make our last stand count for something. Captain, I've been fighting these machines for 2 weeks. I know their behavioral patterns. They'll commit everything to eliminating active resistance before moving on to secondary objectives. That gives us the time we need. The plan was tactically brilliant and strategically suicidal. It would work. His understanding of Devourer psychology was clearly extensive, but it offered no hope of survival for the defenders. They would die buying time for strangers they would never meet. Ra made his decision with the certainty of a veteran commander. Doctor, prepare the shuttle for mobile combat operations. Tactical officer, upload the sergeant's defensive pattern to our navigation systems. We implement his plan in 15 minutes. Sir, his pilot protested, this mission was observation and reconnaissance. Headquarters didn't authorize extended combat operations against major Devourer formations. Headquarters isn't here, Ra replied firmly. I am, and I'm authorizing whatever actions are necessary to protect civilian populations from devourer assault. Looked up from his preparations with something approaching respect. Captain, you should know, if we do this, your ship probably won't make it home. These machines don't leave survivors. Sergeant, in the past hour, I've watched you hold ground that entire battalions couldn't defend. If humans can risk everything for strangers, I think hegemony officers can manage the same standard. The approach to their new defensive position took 12 minutes through terrain that looked like the surface of a dead world. Rode in the shuttle's cargo bay, continuing to field strip and reassemble his rifle with mechanical precision. His movements were economical and practiced, showing no wasted motion despite his obvious exhaustion. Sergeant, Doctor asked during the flight, what drove your species to develop such extreme protective instincts? Most evolutionary pressures favor individual survival over group sacrifice. Paused in his work to consider the question. Doctor, humans figured out early that individual survival doesn't mean much if your community dies around you. We're social creatures. Our children, our families, our societies, they're extensions of ourselves. Protecting them isn't sacrifice. It's self-preservation on a larger scale. But you've never met these particular children. Doesn't matter. They're human children, which makes them my responsibility. Same way a hegemony captain protects civilians in hegemony space, even if he's never met them personally. Ra felt the comparison hit home. Was right, the principle was identical, even if the scale was different. But human implementation seemed more personal, more immediate, as if the abstract concept of duty had been internalized to the point where it became instinctive. The new defensive position was everything had promised: narrow approach routes, excellent fields of fire, and multiple fallback positions that would allow them to control the pace of engagement. The sergeant moved through the setup with obvious expertise, positioning supplies and equipment for maximum tactical advantage. 20 minutes to contact, reported the tactical officer. Lead elements are moving faster than projected. Nodded grimly. They've adapted their approach based on our previous engagement. Expect coordinated tactics and improved target prioritization. Captain, are your weapons systems optimized for rapid target switching? Affirmative. Our gunners are experienced with multiple target engagements. Good, because we're about to face more targets than most people see in their entire careers. As spoke, the first Devourer scouts appeared on the horizon, sleek, fast-moving units designed for reconnaissance and target identification. Tracked them with his rifle, but didn't fire, allowing them to confirm the defender's position and report back to the main force. Tactical patience, he explained his questioning look. Let them think they know where we are and what we're capable of. The surprise comes when they realize how wrong they were. The main Devourer force crested the ridge 18 minutes later, and the sight was enough to make even experienced warriors pause. Over 100 mechanical units moving in perfect coordination, their quantum brains linked in a distributed network that allowed instantaneous communication and tactical adaptation. They advanced like a living thing, flowing around obstacles and maintaining formation integrity despite the broken terrain. Magnificent and terrifying, Ra murmured. Raised his rifle and settled into a firing position. Captain, they're beautiful when they're far away. Up close, they're just machines that need to be stopped. Are you ready to give some children a chance to grow up? The first shot rang out across the battlefield, and began his final lesson in the battle that followed would be studied in hegemony military academies for generations, though the full scope of its implications wouldn't be understood for years. Captain Ra watched human warfare unfold with the fascination of a scholar and the respect of a fellow warrior, recognizing that he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic military history. Sergeant fought like a force of nature given tactical awareness. He moved through the battlefield with fluid precision, appearing where needed most and disappearing before enemy units could coordinate effective responses. His rifle cracked with metronomic regularity, each shot finding critical systems in Devourer units with accuracy that probability. How is his hit rate so high? Demanded the alien's tactical officer as another enemy unit collapsed with its quantum brain destroyed. He's firing at maximum range through atmospheric distortion with a primitive kinetic weapon. Doctor monitored biometrics with growing amazement. His neural activity is unlike anything in our databases. He's processing tactical information at speeds that approach quantum computational levels, but using purely organic neural architecture. Himself would have been surprised by their analysis. To him, the battlefield had simply become clear and comprehensible. Exhaustion had burned away everything non-essential, leaving only the fundamental skills that had kept him alive for 14 days. He saw patterns where others saw chaos, recognized threats before they fully developed, and instinctively knew which targets would create the greatest tactical advantage. The Devourer formation had initially approached with standard assault patterns coordinated advances designed to overwhelm defensive positions through superior numbers and firepower. But's mobile defense disrupted their programming, forcing rapid tactical adaptations that created opportunities for the Allied defenders. First fallback position in 30 seconds, called over the comm as he eliminated a flanking unit with 2 precise shots. Captain, concentrate fire on the command node when it presents a targeting opportunity. Take out their coordination and the rest become much more manageable. Ra's gunners followed direction, their plasma artillery reaching out to engage targets the human had identified. The combination was devastatingly effective human tactical awareness, guiding alien firepower to maximum advantage. Devourer units that should have overwhelmed any resistance found themselves fighting a coordinated defense that anticipated their movements and exploited their weaknesses. The retreat to the second position was a masterpiece of tactical choreography, moved between cover points with economy of motion that wasted no energy on unnecessary actions. Behind him, the alien shuttle provided covering fire with weapons that turned Devourer units into superheated metal fragments. The coordination was so smooth it seemed rehearsed, despite having been improvised minutes earlier. "Sergeant," Ra called as they reached the new position, "your tactical integration with our systems is remarkable. Have humans studied hegemony military doctrine?" Paused in his reloading to consider the question. "Negative, Captain, but good tactics are universal. Establish fields of fire, control engagement range, force enemies into disadvantageous positions. The technology changes, but the principles stay the same." "You speak as if you've done this before." "I have, maybe not at this scale, but the fundamentals don't change whether you're facing 10 enemies or 100. You find their weaknesses and exploit them until they stop being threats." Dr. Scanners continued to track impossible performance. His body was operating beyond theoretical limits, sustained by biochemical processes that should have failed hours ago. More intriguing was his cognitive function, pattern recognition, and tactical analysis at levels that suggested human brains had capabilities that galactic science had never documented. "Sergeant, our analysis suggests your species may have neural architecture optimized for extended high-stress performance. Have humans always demonstrated such capabilities?" Engaged a Devourer scout unit while considering her question, destroying it with 3 shots that found gaps in its armor with surgical precision. "Doctor, I don't think we know our own capabilities until circumstances force us to find them. Most humans never face situations that require everything they've got." "But you have. For 2 weeks straight. Turns out humans can adapt to almost anything if the alternative is unacceptable." The second position held for 47 minutes before overwhelming numbers forced another retreat. Had predicted the timeline exactly, pulling back just as Devourer units began coordinating encirclement maneuvers. The alien ship lifted off under heavy fire, its shields flaring as enemy weapons tested their defensive capabilities. "Shields at 60%, reported the pilot. "We can maintain this pace for approximately 90 minutes before risking system failure." Checked his chronometer as they approached the third defensive position. "That's enough. Evacuation completes in 73 minutes. We just need to keep them focused on us for a little longer." The casualty count was encouraging despite the overwhelming odds. Combined human and alien tactics had destroyed 37 Devourer units while sustaining only moderate shield damage. The enemy formation was noticeably less coordinated now, their command structure disrupted by precise targeting and their behavioral algorithms struggling to adapt to tactics they hadn't encountered before. "They're learning," observed as he studied the tactical display. "Next engagement will be different. They'll compensate for our mobility advantage and try to force a static confrontation." "How do we counter that?" Ra asked. Smiled grimly as he checked his ammunition. 14 rounds remaining. We give them what they want, but not how they expect it. Static defense from a prepared position with overlapping fields of fire. Make them come to us on our terms. The third position was a natural fortress high ground overlooking the only viable approach route, with defensive positions that maximized the alien's firepower advantage. Positioned himself where he could control the entire battlefield, his rifle commanding key that would channel enemy movement into predetermined kill zones. "This is where we make our stand," he announced simply. "No more fallback positions, everything ends here." The approaching Devourer formation had reorganized into a massive assault wave designed to overwhelm any defensive position through sheer volume of fire. Over 80 units moved in coordinated patterns that would have impressed human military theorists, their quantum brains sharing tactical data in real time to optimize their attack vectors. 68 minutes until evacuation completion, noted, settling into his firing position. Plenty of time to show these machines what happens when they threaten human children. Doctor's sensors detected massive energy buildups throughout the approaching formation. "Sergeant, they're preparing for simultaneous bombardment of this entire position. Combined firepower will exceed our defensive capabilities." "Doctor, they can have superior firepower. We have superior motivation." Acquired his first target and settled into the rhythm that had sustained him for 14 days of continuous combat. "Captain, when this starts, it's going to be intense. Trust the plan and trust your training. We're going to hurt them badly before they hurt us." The final battle began with a coordinated Devourer artillery barrage that lit up the sky with energy discharges. The alien ship's shields flared and sparked under the assault, but held long enough for return fire to begin devastating the enemy formation. His rifle added its voice to the symphony of destruction, each shot carefully aimed at critical systems that would cascade into total unit failure. Ra watched the human fight with something approaching awe. Moved between targets with mechanical precision, his shooting so accurate that Devourer units began avoiding the sectors he controlled. More than marksmanship, it was the tactical awareness that impressed, seemed to know where every enemy unit was moving before they arrived, positioning himself to exploit weaknesses that weren't obvious until his shots found them. "He's not just fighting," the captain murmured to Doctor. "He's conducting a symphony of destruction. Every shot serves multiple purposes." The doctor's readings confirmed what they were witnessing. His neural patterns indicate processing speeds that approach artificial intelligence levels. He's analyzing thousands of variables simultaneously and adjusting his tactics in real time. This is beyond normal biological capability. "Then perhaps," Ra replied, "we need to expand our understanding of what normal means for humans." His ammunition ran out during the third wave of the assault. He made his last shot count, a Devourer command unit that had been coordinating flanking movements. Its destruction created a gap in enemy coordination that the aliens exploited with devastating effectiveness, their plasma artillery carving through confused Devourer ranks. "I'm out," reported calmly, setting aside his rifle. "Captain, it's all you from here." But instead of retreating to safety, remained in his position, calling out tactical observations and target priorities that guided the aliens' fire with precision they couldn't have achieved alone. His exhausted body was no longer capable of combat, but his mind remained sharp and focused on the mission. Movement on the left flank, 3 units approaching through the debris field. Priority targets in order of threat assessment. Energy signatures suggest the lead unit has enhanced shielding concentrate fire on the secondary target first to disrupt their formation. Ra's crew followed directions with growing respect and amazement. The human was effectively serving as their tactical coordinator despite being completely defenseless, using pure observational skills and tactical knowledge to multiply their combat effectiveness. The last Devourer unit fell 41 minutes before evacuation completion, its quantum brain sparking as alien weapons reduced it to scrap metal. The battlefield fell silent, except for the crackling of cooling metal and the hum of the shuttle's engines. Slumped against his position, finally allowing exhaustion to claim him. "Mission accomplished, Captain. Corridor is secure for civilian evacuation." Doctor immediately began medical scans as Ra approached the human warrior. "Sergeant, our tactical analysis indicates you've just accomplished something unprecedented in galactic military history. a single individual coordinating defense against a major devourer assault formation. Managed a weak smile. Captain, I had good help your people fight well. The evacuation ships arrived precisely on schedule, their hulls gleaming against the ash-darkened sky of 442B. Captain Ra watched from his shuttle as 437 human civilians emerged from underground shelters, blinking in the pale light of a wounded world. Among them were 63 children, exactly as Sergeant had. Doctor continued her scans of the unconscious human soldier, her crystalline form flickering with excitement and concern. Captain, his biological readings are stabilizing, but slowly. The physiological stress he endured should have caused permanent damage, yet his systems are adapting and recovering at remarkable rates. Had been unconscious for 6 hours, his body finally allowing itself the rest it had been for over 2 weeks. The medical bay of the alien shuttle was small but well-equipped, and had done everything possible to ensure his survival. The human's remarkable constitution was doing the rest. Ra studied the evacuation proceedings with professional interest. The human civilians moved with discipline despite their obvious exhaustion and trauma. There was no panic, no disorder, just quiet efficiency as they boarded the rescue vessels. Even the children showed remarkable composure, staying close to their guardians and following instructions without complaint. Interesting, he murmured to his tactical officer. They're organizing themselves into family units and support groups without external coordination. Very efficient social structure under stress. Sir, should we make contact with the evacuation commanders? Our mission reports will need to include details about human military capabilities. Ra considered the question carefully. The past 18 hours had revealed human capabilities that would dramatically alter the galactic strategic balance if properly understood and utilized. But they had also revealed something more important: character traits that suggested humans could be valuable allies rather than simple client species. Prepare a preliminary contact package, he decided. Standard first contact protocols, but emphasize our positive combat experience with Sergeant. I want these humans to understand we view them as potential equals, not subordinates. Doctor's attention suddenly focused on her patient. Captain, he's regaining consciousness. Neural patterns are stabilizing and approaching normal human baselines. His eyes opened slowly, taking several moments to focus on his surroundings. When awareness returned, his first words were characteristic. Status report. Are the civilians secure? All 437 evacuated successfully, Ra reported. No casualties during extraction. The evacuation corridor remained clear throughout the operation. Nodded weakly, satisfaction evident despite his exhaustion. Good, that's good. He struggled to sit up, wincing as various injuries made themselves known. Captain, I need to ask a favor. My mission reports and tactical observations, they need to reach Terran Command. Other humans need to know what we learned about fighting devourers. Of course, Sergeant. But perhaps more importantly, the hegemony needs to know what we learned about fighting alongside humans. Paused in his movements to look at the alien captain. Sir. Ra chose his words carefully. Sergeant, in 48 hours of combat operations, you demonstrated tactical capabilities and combat endurance that exceed established parameters for most known species. Your coordination with our forces was seamless despite having no prior experience with hegemony technology or doctrine. This suggests compatibility for joint military operations. You're talking about an alliance. I'm talking about mutual respect between warriors who share common values. Protection of civilians, defense of the innocent, sacrifice for others. These are universal principles that transcend species barriers. Doctor interjected with characteristic scientific precision. Sergeant, our analysis indicates human neural architecture may be uniquely suited for tactical coordination and stress management. Combined with your species' apparent psychological resilience, this could represent significant advantages in ongoing conflicts against automated threats like the Devourers. Absorbed this information while testing his physical capabilities. His body was responding better than expected, though he would clearly need extended recovery time. Dr. Captain, I appreciate the analysis, but I need you to understand something about humans. What you observed wasn't special training or genetic enhancement. It was just a human soldier doing his job. Explain. Every human military has thousands of people like me. We're trained to hold positions, protect civilians, and accomplish missions regardless of personal cost. The capabilities you documented aren't unique. They're standard for human soldiers when circumstances require maximum effort. The implications hung in the air like a challenge to everything the aliens thought they knew about human military potential. If was representative rather than exceptional, then human forces could field thousands of warriors with capabilities that matched or exceeded elite hegemony units. Thousands, Ra repeated slowly. Sergeant, are you claiming that human military forces routinely produce soldiers capable of the performance we witnessed? Managed a tired smile. Captain, you've met one human soldier under extreme circumstances. Wait until you meet a full human military unit operating under standard conditions with proper equipment and support. We might surprise you. The communication panel suddenly activated with an incoming transmission from the evacuation fleet. A new voice spoke in accented but clear hegemony standard. Unknown vessel, this is Colonel Sarah Martinez, commanding officer of the civilian evacuation operation. We have reports of alien contact and request immediate communication. Ra and exchanged glances. First contact between species was typically a formal diplomatic process involving months of careful preparation and protocol establishment, but circumstances had forced them into a more practical approach. This is Captain Ra of the Hegemony Third Fleet. We have provided combat assistance to your forces and request permission to establish formal diplomatic contact. The response came without hesitation. Permission granted, Captain. We understand you fought alongside one of our soldiers against devourer forces. Any species willing to risk their lives for human civilians is welcome in our space. Struggled to his feet despite doctors' medical protests. Colonel Martinez, this is Sergeant. Mission accomplished. All civilians accounted for and secure. Good work, Sergeant. The children are asking about the soldier who kept them safe. Seems you made quite an impression. Just doing my job, ma'am. Copy that, Sergeant. Captain Ra, we have medical facilities aboard our command vessel if your human casualty requires treatment beyond your capabilities. Ra looked at questioningly. The human soldier shook his head slightly. Thank you, Colonel, but I'm in good hands here. These people know what they're doing. Over the following hours, as evacuation ships prepared for departure and formal contact protocols were established, Ra found himself reconsidering everything he thought he knew about galactic politics and military alliances. The humans were clearly more capable than anyone had suspected, but more importantly, they demonstrated values and principles that aligned closely with hegemony ideals. Captain, his communications officer reported, we're receiving priority transmissions from Hegemony Command. They want full tactical reports on human military capabilities and recommendations for future contact protocols. Prepare a comprehensive report, Ra ordered. Include all combat observations but emphasize the compatibility factors. I want Command to understand that humans represent potential allies, not just another client species. Overheard the conversation from his medical berth. Captain, when you write that report, make sure they understand something important. Humans don't fight well because we're naturally aggressive or because we enjoy violence. We fight well because we care about protecting things that matter to us. Give us something worth defending, and you'll find out what humans are really capable of. Doctors' final medical scans confirmed what they had all witnessed. Human physiology included capabilities that galactic science had never documented. But more than physical abilities, humans demonstrated psychological resilience and tactical adaptability that could revolutionize military doctrine across the galaxy. Sergeant, she said as she completed her analysis, your species may be the key to finally stopping the devourer expansion. Your tactical capabilities against automated opponents are unprecedented. Doctor, humans have been fighting machines for centuries. We've learned that the best way to beat artificial intelligence is with human determination and creativity. Machines are predictable once you understand their programming. Humans were a little harder to figure out. As the evacuation fleet prepared to depart 442B, leaving behind a world by devourer consumption, Ra made his final assessment of humanity's potential role in galactic affairs. The humans had technology that was primitive by galactic standards, but they had something far more valuable, the will to sacrifice everything for principles they considered important. Sergeant, he said formally, It has been an honor to serve alongside you. I hope this represents the beginning of a long alliance between our species." Extended his hand in the human gesture of respect and partnership. "Captain, any species willing to risk their lives for children they've never met is the kind of ally humans respect. I think we're going to get along just fine." As their ships departed for their respective home systems, both carrying reports that would change the course of galactic history, neither species fully understood the significance of what had occurred. They had discovered not just military compatibility, but shared values that would form the foundation of an alliance capable of standing against any threat. In the depths of space, Devourer machines continued their mechanical consumption of worlds. But for the first time in years, they would encounter resistance that they weren't programmed to understand the combined determination of species that had learned to fight together for something greater than individual survival. The age of human expansion into galactic affairs had begun not with diplomacy or conquest, but with a single soldier who refused to abandon his post. Sergeant would return to Earth with stories that his superiors would barely believe, but he would also return with new allies who had learned that sometimes the most advanced technology in the universe was simple human courage applied with tactical precision. The children in the evacuation fleet would grow up in a galaxy where humans and aliens served together, fought together, and protected each other's young with equal determination. They would inherit a universe where species barriers had been broken down not by treaties or trade agreements, but by warriors who discovered that courage and honor were truly universal languages. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, Devourer machines would soon learn what happened when they threatened beings under the protection of humans who had decided that losing simply wasn't an option. "Sergeant," Ra said formally, "it has been an honor to serve alongside you." The human's eyes were already closing as medical stims finally allowed his body to shut down non-essential systems. But his last words carried clearly across the battlefield. "Just doing my job, sir. Someone had to keep the children safe." Determination. Behind him, alien warriors who had thought they understood courage prepared to learn exactly what humans meant when they said failure wasn't an option. Managed a weak smile as he struggled to focus his eyes. "Because that's what I would do, and doctor, these machines learn from everything they encounter. They just learned about humans." As he began composing his message, Ra couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would be remembered long after the war ended. Something about this human, about their unbreakable determination and selfless courage, suggested that first contact was about to become far more significant than anyone had anticipated.